There is no virtue in ignorance. You were not born to be blind to the games played around you. You were born to see clearly, act wisely, and lead silently. And in matters of the heart, just like matters of war or politics, there are games, subtle, emotional, and sometimes destructive. Hi Val, you men are not angry at these games. They study them, understand them, outsmart them, because he who rages loses control, but he who observes commands. The first weapon of the High Val, you man, is emotional mastery. Where others react, he reflects. When tested with silence, he does not beg. When tempted with beauty, he does not chase. He does not fear loss, for he knows he is the prize, not out of arrogance, but because he has built himself brick by brick. Discipline by discipline. Understand this. Women do not test you to hurt you. They test you to measure you, and a man who breaks under pressure reveals that he was never made of strength. But the one who holds his line, keeps his vision, remains composed. He becomes unshakable in her eyes, or walks away with his dignity intact. Either way, he wins. Second, the high. Val, you man controls the frame. Most men walk into conversations, relationships, even marriages, unaware they are being pulled into someone else's narrative. But not him. He sets the tone, he leads the story. If she tries to shame him, he stands calmly in truth. If she tries to confuse him, he returns to clarity. He never trades his logic for affection. You see, control is not loud, it is silent, calm, and unyielding, and finally, he is desired but never dependent. The modern man has been trained to think that love must come with surrendering himself entirely, that without her, he is nothing. But the truth is this: a man who fears being alone will accept chains made of velvet. A man who has purpose, ambition, brotherhood, and values, he will always be desired, but he will never chase validation like a beggar chasing bread, because the hive, Al, you man, does not need her to complete him. He invites her to join him, but should she play games meant to belittle or control, he walks, not in anger but in peace. This is how you outsmart the games. The first and greatest battlefield a man must master is within himself. Emotions are the most seductive of enemies. They disguise themselves as truth, as love, as rage that feels righteous. Yet a high, Val, you man knows this. He cannot afford to let emotion become his compass, because feelings are often short, sighted, self-serving, and blind to long-term consequence. To be truly powerful, a man must understand emotion but never be ruled by it. He must allow it to inform but never to command. When a woman tests him, when she withdraws affection to watch his reaction, when she incites jealousy with calculated indifference, the average man crumbles. He becomes reactive, desperate, and uncalibrated. But the man of value, he sees the game unfolding before him and remains still, composed. Not because he is cold, but because he is trained. There is a common misunderstanding that emotional control means repression. That is a weak man's misinterpretation. Suppression leads to outbursts. Mastery, on the other hand, leads to influence. The high, Val, you man feels everything deeply. He simply does not allow every feeling to become a command. He is the king of his inner court. No emotion, no matter how loud, can dethrone him. When he is disrespected, he doesn't shout, he recalibrates. When he is manipulated, he doesn't whine, he distances, because he knows that responding emotionally to a provocation is the very proof of being conquered. Women are intuitive beings. They do not measure a man by what he says, but by what shakes him, a raised voice, a bitter tone, a look of desperation when ignored. These are the giveaways of a man not in control. And why should a woman follow a man who cannot lead himself? If she can disrupt his sense of identity with a text, a glance, or silence, then he was never solid to begin with. The hive, Al, Man does not resist tests with force. He neutralizes them with presence. He welcomes the storm because he is the eye of it. He does not chase validation, and that alone makes him a paradox in her eyes, unpredictable, sovereign, and deeply attractive. We must face an uncomfortable truth. Many men today are trained to believe that expressing every emotion is authenticity. But raw emotion without discipline is not truth. It is chaos. It is immaturity dressed up as vulnerability. The man of value knows how to hold space for his feelings without being devoured by them. He cries if he must, in private or in the arms of a trusted few, but he never lets sadness define his decisions. He may feel anger, but he never lets it write his words. Emotional honesty is not the same as emotional leakage. A disciplined heart does not deny its pain, it simply does not let pain steer the ship. This self-mastery becomes especially vital when navigating the emotional games some women, consciously or unconsciously, engage in. From hot-hand, cold affection to strategic silence, from dramatic ultimatums to the slow erosion of respect, these are not always malicious actions. Often they are tests, unspoken questions. Is he grounded, or will he collapse under pressure? Is he a man of resolve, or just a boy with muscles and a fragile ego? The man recognizes these tests not as insults, but as opportunities to affirm, not to perform. He remains calm not to prove a point, but because that is who he has become. The woman may expect drama and gets silence. She expects begging and gets indifference. She expects guilt and receives measured truth. And in that moment, she sees a man not built by impulse, but by principle. This emotional detachment, when done correctly, is not cruelty. It is clarity. It allows a man to make decisions aligned with long-term value, not short-term emotion. He can walk away from toxicity with peace, not revenge. He can offer love without losing himself. He can forgive without forgetting, and if needed, he can disappear, not to punish, but to protect his inner kingdom from corrosion. In truth, a man's emotional control is the foundation of all his other powers. Without it, his wealth becomes a weapon against himself. His charm turns into manipulation. His intelligence serves his insecurities. But when his emotions are in harmony with his logic, when he feels deeply but chooses wisely, he becomes something rare, a man both feared and loved. Not because he dominates others, but because he has mastered the only thing that truly matters, himself. In every interaction between man and woman, there exists an invisible but powerful force at play, the frame. The frame is the lens through which reality is interpreted, the subtle boundary that defines who leads and who follows, who influences and who adapts. Most men go through life unaware that such a frame exists, unaware that every conversation, every flirtation, every emotional exchange is a negotiation of power. But the man sees it clearly. He understands that if he does not define the context, someone else will define it for him. And once he is inside another's frame, particularly a woman's, he becomes subject to her rules, her expectations, and her emotional tides. The game is no longer his to play. He has already lost. Control over the frame does not come from brute force or raised voices. It comes from inner certainty, man doesn't shout his standards, he lives by them. When he enters a room, he does not demand respect. His presence commands it. Why? Because his sense of self is not negotiable. He knows who he is, what he wants, and what he will not tolerate. And that certainty becomes the gravitational field that others unconsciously orbit. Most women, whether they admit it or not, are magnetized by this strength. not the illusion of dominance, but the calm confidence of a man who cannot be manipulated by praise or punishment. He sets the tone and the room adjusts. A woman's emotional games often involve subtle frame shifts. One moment she's testing his masculinity with sarcasm. The next she's implying he should apologize for being confident, or questioning his motives with passive aggression. She may use silence as leverage or affection as bait. These are not signs of cruelty. Often they are instinctive, but they are still challenges to the man's frame. The weak man adjusts himself to her mood. He tiptoes, explains himself endlessly, and seeks to restore harmony by pleasing her. In doing so, he sends a silent signal: "Your emotions control me." And once she senses that, the dynamic has already shifted. She is no longer responding to him, she is controlling him. The high value man never allows his reality to be rewritten by emotion. If she accuses him of arrogance because he has standards, he does not flinch. If she withdraws affection to test his composure, he does not chase. If she tries to shame him into compromise, he remains still, not out of spite, but out of principle. He does not play defense in a game he never agreed to. He maintains his frame like a general holds a fortress, not with chaos, but with structure. He can validate her feelings without sacrificing his values. He can be compassionate without becoming submissive. This is not rigidity, it is anchored fluidity. He bends where he chooses, but never where he's pushed. To control the frame is not to dominate, it is to define. It is to lead the emotional tempo of the relationship. A high-value man understands that women often look to him not just for protection, but for emotional direction. If he is scattered, she becomes anxious. If he is unsure, she becomes reactive. But if he is centered, she feels safe, even in chaos. And so, when she brings the storm, he does not meet it with panic. He becomes the eye of it. That stillness becomes her mirror, and slowly she aligns herself to his clarity. This is the quiet leadership of the man who holds the frame. It is not about suppressing her spirit. It is about guiding the energy of the relationship through emotional maturity. Let us not pretend this is easy. It requires relentless self-awareness, discipline, and restraint. The world will try to pull him into countless frames: societal guilt, emotional manipulation, modern ideologies that reward passivity over principle. But the man who chooses to lead his own frame becomes immune to trends. He does not bend to be liked. He does not adapt to be accepted. He shapes his reality and invites others into it, on his terms. And those who cannot respect his frame, he simply lets go, not out of hatred, but out of self-respect. The tragedy of modern relationships is that most men do not lose because they lack love or effort. They lose because they surrendered the frame early and never took it back. They became actors in someone else's script. But the man of value writes his own. He moves through the world not as a pawn, but as a player, because he understands one eternal truth. If you do not control the frame, you will be ruled by someone else's. There is no greater mistake a man can make than to tie his worth to another person's affection. In a world where emotions are fleeting, where attention can be bought and discarded like fashion, dependency is weakness in disguise. A high-value man may love, he may connect deeply, he may give generously, but he never builds his identity around being accepted. He is desired, yes, sought after, admired, but never dependent. That is the quiet difference that separates the strong from the broken. When a man makes a woman his source of happiness, he forfeits the ability to lead. He places his emotional stability in hands that do not belong to him. And in doing so, he becomes easy to control, easy to destabilize, easy to break. Desire is a complement, dependency is a cage. A man must never confuse the two. When a woman knows that you cannot walk away, she holds the power to shape your reality with her moods, her silence, her validation or lack of it. But when she sees that you can walk away, not out of anger but out of calm self-worth, her entire approach changes. She stops testing your boundaries because she knows they are real. She stops weaponizing affection because she knows it won't enslave you. This is not about coldness. It is about freedom. Love is only pure when it is chosen, not needed. The moment you need it to feel whole, it becomes a drug, and she becomes the dealer. The high, Al, you man does not fear being alone. In solitude, he sharpens his mind, builds his craft, fortifies his spirit. He understands that being alone and being lonely are not the same. Most men fear silence because they have no inner voice of strength. So they cling to anyone who offers temporary warmth, but that desperation leaks through in every interaction. It makes them chase, beg, overcompensate, and compromise far too quickly. A woman may smile at the attention, but she never respects the energy of a man who needs her more than she needs him. Respect dies the moment need replaces choice. It is not that hive, Al. You men do not feel pain or heartbreak. They do. But even in heartbreak, they do not collapse. They absorb the lesson, they bleed in silence, and then they rise, stronger, because they have never handed over the key to their peace. They understand that to be a king, you must never crown someone else as the source of your throne. Women can walk alongside him, but never above his sense of self. If a woman becomes his world, he has already abandoned his mission, and she will feel that void and quietly resent it. She wants a man with a world of his own, a man so full of purpose that she feels privileged to be a part of it, not responsible for filling the emptiness. To be desired is to live in abundance. A man who invests in himself radiates confidence that cannot be faked. He has options not because he collects women like trophies, but because he has made himself rare. His discipline, his ambition, his emotional control, his ability to say no, these things make him a man of gravity. Women are drawn not to his possessions, but to his presence, not to his flattery, but to his silence, not to his words, but to the energy of a man who would rather lose her than lose himself. That is power. Dependency, on the other hand, leads men to betray themselves, to ignore red flags, to stay in disrespectful dynamics, to lower standards in exchange for validation, and over time that betrayal corrodes them. They become shells of men, pleasing others while secretly resenting themselves. A man who loses his edge to keep affection has already lost far more than love. He has lost his soul, and once a man loses his soul, no amount of attention, intimacy, or approval will fill the void. The solution is simple but not easy. Build a life that does not revolve around any one person. Build a body that reflects discipline, a mind that reflects clarity, a mission that transcends approval. Let women be the beautiful addition, not the foundation. Let them feel your love, but never your desperation. Let them know they are wanted, but never needed, because the man who needs nothing is the man who can offer everything, from a place of strength, not sacrifice. That is the essence of being high, Al. You to be deeply desired, but absolutely untouchable by dependence.